Hello my lovelies, welcome back to another video. My name is Gemma and today I'm going to talk you through all of the books that I read in November. So November, I'm massively overcommitted and I read about the normal amount of books that I read. So did I achieve any of the things? Not really, but it's all right. It's fine. It's fine. So in November, I read 9 books. So as usual, if you've been here before, you'll know how I run my wrap-ups. I'll go through a few little statsy bits because who doesn't love stats? And then we'll go into a bit of a review for each of the books. So as I said, I read 9 books this month, plus 1 DNF, and not including the DNF, I read 2,781 pages, which is about standard, as you can see from the graph. Of those books, 2 were non-fiction, 4 were by BIPOC authors, format-wise. I read 3 audiobooks, 4 ebooks and 2 physical books. And star ratings, we had 1 2-star read, 6 4-star reads and 2 5-star reads. From a genre perspective, I showed this last time. This is a direct cut out from the Storygraph data and it shows you the genres that I read. As I mentioned last time, sometimes it does double count a genre. If something is, for example, a children's book and a fantasy book, it will put it into both categories. So obviously there's more than 9 here because a lot of them went over multiple genres. But the ones that I read most of were children's, feminism, literary, historical, fantasy and contemporary. So that's it. That's all the stats. We're done. Whistle stop tour. So let's get into the books. Oh, and also I just wanted to say massive thank you to everyone who pushed me over the 200 subscribers mark. That was a lovely feeling and that actually happened on my son's birthday and he was very happy too. And you'll see him a bit later from his pre-birthday life. So let's crack on before I go on a complete tangent. So the first book that I finished in November was Americanah by Chimamanda Ngozi Adiche. I listened to this on audio. This is a book where we have 2 perspectives. The perspective of a woman and a man who live in Nigeria and they are childhood sweethearts, and then as they grow into adolescence, one moves to America to study and the other one goes to Britain. And it is about, so it skips around the timelines and you have the experience of a Nigerian immigrant in America and of a Nigerian immigrant in the UK, and obviously their experience together in Nigeria. So this book is packed full of cultural stuff, racial stuff. There is feminism issues in here. There is stuff about religion. It is chock-a-block full of all the stuff I like to read about, stuff that isn't directly relevant to me, basically. So I would highly recommend this book. I also listened to this on audio, which I also highly recommend. The narrator was fantastic. I can't remember her name off the top of my head, but I will insert her name here. But she was brilliant. You got the Nigerian accent, you got the American accent, and you got the British accent beautifully. And it did just add that extra layer to the story. So yeah, that was a big tick. And I gave this book 4 stars. I absolutely loved the main female character. I thought she was brilliant. She writes blogs about being a non-American black, and a lot of it is quite to the point, and it was brilliant. Her character was spot on. There's a lot about relationships, about self-worth, those sorts of things coming from her. I really enjoyed that. The male character I did also like, but not as much, possibly just because I can relate to a female more. But his storyline seemed a tiny bit weaker to me personally, so that's why I only got 4. I say only, 4 is a great rating. I highly recommend this book, and I will absolutely be picking up more work by this author. The next book that I read was The Binding by Bridget Collins, and I buddy read this with the delightful Nikki over at Red Dot Reads. If you haven't checked her out yet, please go and do that. She'll be linked below. And I really enjoyed this book. So in this one, apologies if you've seen my winter reads recommendations, you'll have already heard me talk about this. But brief synopsis, you have a boy who becomes an apprentice bookbinder in a world which is sort of loosely Victorian, sort of 1800s vibes, very gothic, very sort of the bookbinders where he goes at the beginning of the story is set like in marshland, so you've got all those sorts of vibes. The story starts in the autumn and then progresses through the winter, so it's all those sort of like dark nights and cold and all those sorts of things. So yeah, we follow him. There's a bit of timeline skipping around, which worked really well. The way that Bridget Collins built that in worked perfectly. I liked this book more than Nikki. This was right up my alley. It was like historical fiction with a bit of fantasy thrown in, and well, to be fair, that's quite up Nikki's alley as well, but I just really liked it. So yeah, there was some great representation in here. I'm not going to tell you much more than that. And I quite liked in this how we got sort of snippets of non-integral characters' lives. So there's sort of maids and people out on the streets, and you sort of hear a little bit of their story, and it just sort of built for me the society and the world that we were in, and I really liked that. It made me feel more immersed in the story. So yes, I would highly recommend. I liked it a lot, and I have already purchased her other book on Kindle, the name of which escapes me, but it was new out this year. No, it's gone out of my mind. So book number 3 was Serpentine by Phillip Pullman. I read this on my Kindle, and this is sort of a spin-off story from his Dark Materials, where after the events of the Dark Materials, Lyra and Pan go back up to the north and basically have a conversation with the witch consul. And that's it. That is it. This book, I think technically it's like 70 pages, but it's a lot of illustrations. The illustrations are beautiful, don't get me wrong, but man, this book was basically just a way to make more money for Phillip Pullman. There was no story in here. It was one conversation. Yeah, really disappointed in that. Next, I finished Echo Mountain by Lauren Wolk. Sorry, it's a library copy, so it's a bit shiny. And I read this to my 9-year-old, as he is now. And so I thought, rather than telling you my thoughts, as I am not the intended audience for this, I would get him to. So I'm going to skip over to him reviewing this for you. Right, so I am here today with Sam.
Hiya.
So Sam is my 8-year-old. I have mentioned him a few times before on this channel, but for this particular book that we're going to wrap up, I've been reading this to Sam for the last month or so. Yeah. And so I thought it would be useful to have a child's perspective on a children's book. And he is also going to update you a little bit on what he is reading and has been reading over the last
2-3 months.
2-3 months. So we'll start with this one. So we have been, it's a bit difficult to see because of the glare. This is a library book. This is Echo Mountain by Lauren Wolk. Sam, why don't you tell us roughly what this book is about without any spoilers?
It's basically about a family that lives on a mountain that are quite poor.
Yeah? So what's the main character like?
Her name is Ellie. And she's a 12-year-old girl who has saved a dog named Quiet. And about 50 pages in, I think, we find out about her dad going into a coma. Yeah.
And then the rest of the story is Ellie trying to help her dad, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I enjoyed this book. It has quite a lot of nice nature writing in, doesn't it?
Yes.
Lots of stuff about bees and foraging and those sorts of things. What did you like about the book, Sam?
It's a long children's book that is made for like parents to read to children. And what were the best bits without spoilers? What is it? I can edit that out if you accidentally do a spoiler. So what were your favourite bits? I don't know.
You quite liked trying to guess what would happen next, didn't you?
Yeah.
Making predictions as we went through the story. Yeah. And you always like a book with a dog in, don't you?
Yeah.
So there were a few dogs in this, weren't there?
5.
Was there 5? Maybe.
Well, we've got Captain,
Maisie,
Quiet,
and the other puppies.
Fred, and I think there was 2 others.
Yeah.
So around 5.
So yeah, overall we both really enjoyed this one, and we are quite keen to read another book by Lauren Wolk, aren't we?
Yeah.
So in the back it tells us that she has written 2 other books, Wolf Hollow and Beyond the Bright Sea.
But before we read those ones, we're reading something called Nevermore.
By?
I don't know.
Jessica Townsend. So yeah, so we'll wrap this up when we're finished it too. So Sam has been reading a series for a little while now. How many books are in the series? 13. And what book are you on?
10.
So tell us a bit about this, what the series is, who the author is, and what you like about it.
Who's the author?
Tommy Donbavand.
So its name is Scream Street, and it's a 13-book series with about 120 pages each. That is the 10th book, because I'm giving lots of the other books to my friends to read, and they will like it too. So I think lots of other people would like to read it. It's a good series. If you're lucky, you can get it for quite cheap, but it's normally quite expensive.
We got an Amazon deal, didn't we?
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's about, the first 6 books are about 3 characters, Luke, Ruth and Cleo, trying to find 6 relics to open a portal to the real land. Because in the first book, Luke and his parents got taken to Scream Street, but Luke's parents were terrified because we thought they were humans, but later in the stories we find out they're not.
Don't tell anyone what they are.
I won't. They might already know when I tell what the monsters they. Luke is a werewolf, Cleo's a mummy, and Ruth is a vampire. You find out a bit in the first book about Ruth. It has fake fangs and is not really a real vampire. But he lives in a vampire family, so he has got transported to Scream Street with them. And Luke does partial transformations, so he can transform into just his head or just his arm. And he very rarely transforms his whole body. and later in the books he learns to control which body parts he wants to transform. And it's a really good series. The last 6 books are about returning all the relics. And I won't tell you why they want to, because that would be a spoiler.
So you're really enjoying these, aren't you?
Yeah.
And like Sam said, he's managed to encourage all his friends to read them. So you're all sort of reading them in succession, aren't you?
Yeah.
So how many of your friends are reading them now?
Like 5.
Yeah. So they've been a real hit for all of you in your class, haven't they?
Yeah.
So yeah, that is just a little reading update. Sam.
Bye-bye.
Next up, I did another Buzzy read, and this time I did it with the fabulous Alice from Alice and the Giant Bookshelf. Again, check her out, linked below. And we read The Art of Racing in the Rain by Garth, Stein. So this is a lovely book, and it's told from the perspective of Enzo. Enzo is a dog. So we get Enzo's perspective as he comes into this family. He's bought by the main character, whose name escapes me, who is a race car driver. He buys Enzo, and then we see his life develop. You know, he gets married, he has a child, things happen in his career, da 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 da. And Enzo narrates throughout this. I wasn't expecting to love Enzo as much as I did. He was a fantastic narrator. He was really funny. There was one bit sort of at the beginning where he was basically saying that it was really unfair that monkeys got opposable thumbs and not dogs, because monkeys are so much stupider than dogs. So maybe you had to be there. I thought it was really funny. It was a delight to read, but heartbreaking. I don't think I cried as much as Alice. I think Alice cried on like the 2nd page. But the ending, man, the ending got me. And I finished this book literally just before I did the school run in the morning, and I was like sobbing, and luckily I hadn't put any makeup on that day. But yeah, I was sobbing, and then like my kids were like, "Mum, what's wrong with you?" I was like, "Find your shoes." And yeah, it was really bad. But absolutely loved it. Gave this 4 stars as well. Highly recommend, especially if you're a fan of the likes of Homeward Bound, the film back in the day, or if you've watched A Dog's Purpose. Oh, I'm going to go off on a bit of a tangent now, but if you've ever watched that film, I literally cried like 7 times watching that film with Sam. And yeah, he was like, "Mum, what the hell's wrong with you?" And I was like, "Oh my God, the dogs." Anyway, the next book that I read was It's Not About the Burqa, which is a compilation of essays edited by Mariam. So, if you haven't picked this book up, you really should. This was outstanding. So in this we have a plethora, I think there's, how many is there? 12? 17 essays written by Muslim women of colour, and they cover a magnitude of issues that Black Muslim women face. Everything in here from sexism to Islamophobia, and the way that white feminism is working quite heavily against them. Yeah, a lot of this really stood out to me. There was a section in here where they talk about Muslim marriages, and I didn't realise, but in the UK, it's only a legal requirement to register your marriage if you have a Christian marriage, a Jewish marriage, or like a Quaker marriage. Now, take a wild guess here at whether there are more Quakers or more Muslims living in the UK. Right? So, yes, they can still register their marriages, but it's not a legal requirement. And what that means is that in some cases, women or men are being persuaded to marry and not register it, and that means that if something goes wrong and they get divorced, those people are left with nothing. Often the mother, the woman, with or without children. And it's a real issue, and I didn't even know that was an issue. I have a quote here that I wanted to do. So, and this is by Raitha Rafiq, and she's talking about how she moved from Western Africa. Was it Somalia? I can't actually remember where she moved from. Sorry, Zanzibar. She moved from Zanzibar to the UK, and she was saying how she felt that she had a place to belong when she was in Zanzibar, and then she moved to the UK and all that feeling of belonging had gone. And this quote really stuck out to me, and it said, "Belonging is like a trampoline. It is having the awareness that no matter how high you jump and how many risks you take, there is a place down there that will absorb the force of your fall should you ever come crashing down. Belonging will propel you back up from such a fall, higher." And everyone should have that. Everyone should have that. And it makes me so cross that in the times that we live in today, we're still in a position where people of colour, people of certain religions are just not accepted. And it's also, I could go on about this bit for a while, but I will try and wrap it up quite soon. The fact that we are not taking into account the fact that culture and religion are two different things. So the patriarchy that we associate with being Muslim isn't actually anything to do with Islam. It is to do with the culture. And you know what? And if someone wants to wear a burqa, let them wear a burqa. It's no one else's business if someone wants to wear a burqa. And certainly not white non-Muslim women. It's not our place to say that is making someone else feel a certain way. Ugh! Anyway, as you can see, this had a real impact on me. I really think you should pick it up. I also like the fact that quite a lot of this was specifically relevant to the UK, because I read a lot of sort of feminism and race-related non-fiction that is American-based, and don't get me wrong, that is also very important, but it's nice to get a British perspective as I am a British citizen. Okay, the next book I finished was Farenheit 451, and I read this with the Eclectic Book Club, which is run by Shelley Swearingen and David Wiley. I will link both their channels below. This book club is fantastic, guys. They have a Voxer group, everyone gets involved, there's loads of voice messages going all over the shop. It is a joy to be a part of. So Farenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury is a dystopian novel that was written in the 50s. And it's set in a land where it is illegal to have books. And our main protagonist is a firefighter. But in this world, firefighters don't put out fires, they set fires to books when they are found. And our main protagonist, sort of via various people that he meets, decides that actually maybe he's not doing the right thing, but he lives in a society where it's geared to prevent you from having any independent thoughts. So yeah, I really enjoyed this. It worked particularly well as a group read because there were quite a lot of layers in it that I probably wouldn't have unpicked had I just read it myself. But talking about it with other people, there was a lot of discussion around the different themes and the different characters and what we thought of them. And yeah, it was a delight to read with that group. And I gave this book 4 stars, and I very much want to pick up some more by Ray Bradbury in the new year. The next book I picked up was my other 5-star read for the month, and that was Hood Feminism by Mikki Kendall. I listened to this one on audio, and it's quite similar in a lot of ways to It's Not About the Burqa. We're focusing on race, we're we're focusing on feminism, and we're focusing on the way that white feminism is counterproductive to the feminism of all other women, because everyone else is a minority. And white women just focus on the issues that are relevant for them, and that hurts the minority, the women that are in minorities. Mikki Kendall narrated that book herself, and she was fabulous. I cannot recommend highly enough the audiobook for Hood Feminism. It was very, very US centric because Mikki Kendall is American, obviously. But she did also talk not just about Black women and the issues affecting Black women, but how a lot of those issues are also affecting other minority groups, whether that's Asians, immigrants, LGBTQ, Indigenous people. So it was really fantastic. There was a particular chapter where she talked about maternal health. And I have to say, a lot of what she said made me very pleased that I live in the UK, where we have free healthcare, because it's horrific. I think in America, she said the stats were something like you're 4 times more likely to have a pregnancy-related death in the US if you are Black compared to if you are white. Wow. How is that even a thing? So yeah, the book was fabulous. It hit the nail on the head. Mikki Kendall was blunt, honest, but in all the best ways. Yeah, I thought it was masterfully done, and it covered off a hell of a lot of issues. And the audiobook's not that long, it's only about 5 hours, but I could have listened to her talk about those issues for at least twice that amount of time. And I will probably go back to it and re-listen to it, because you don't catch it all the first time, do you? So yeah, highly, highly recommend. And so those are all the books that I've read. The one that I DNF'd, unfortunately, was the last report on the Miracles at Little No Horse by Louise Erdrich. I was listening to this on audio, and I did get like halfway through. I can't even put my finger on what I didn't like, but I just wasn't connecting with it. Whether it was... So in this book, you're following a priest, and right at the beginning of the book, you find out that this priest is actually a woman. He is like in his 80s, he's sort of like on his last legs, right on his last report, and then it sort of flashbacks to see his life, so how he went from being a woman to being a male priest on an Indigenous reservation. And that was all fine, but it almost felt like short stories. There was like, okay, so this was this part of his life, and this was this part of his life, and this was this part of his life. But it didn't really connect. And then it would be like, well, in this part of his life, this happened to these people, and this happened to these people. But it just didn't really gel together for me. And I found it quite jarring. And yeah, I was really disappointed, because I thought I was going to love it. And I really, really tried to love it, but I just didn't. I will try another Louise Erdrich. I've heard really good things about the Roundhouse, so I might try that one next. But yeah, it just didn't work for me, unfortunately. And that was it. That was everything I read last month. Relatively pleased with it. Pretty standard month. And yeah, please let me know in the comments if you've read any of these, what you thought. If you passionately disagree with me on any of these. Also, if you think I should continue with the Louise Erdrich, if it suddenly gets better in the second half. Yeah, anyway, that is it for now, folks. Thank you very much for listening, and I will see you again soon with another one. Okay, bye.